In September 2024, the royal family took a road trip through a large swath of eastern and central Newfoundland. These are their stories.
This isn't a video about St. John's, but I gotta let you in on a little secret idea I had for the city back in the day to give context to the rest of the video. When I was a teenager, I started to think about how I might one day leave my mark on the city of St. John's. I decided way back then that when I eventually get like really rich, I was going to build a big bridge across the harbor. I couldn't decide if it would be better to build some kind of huge thing that would shoot right across from like where the Irving tanks are up to around Rawlins Cross, or if it would be better to just run something across the Narrows, like from around Cabot Tower across to the South Side Hills, like above where Fort Amherst is. All I knew was that St. John's needed a big fancy suspension bridge for some reason. I know we already got Cabot Tower and Jelly Bean Row and lots of other things. I just wanted to find a way to leave my own mark on the city. I wasn't even concerned about what I was actually connecting or if a huge bridge was actually needed at all. I just wanted to be responsible for adding something big and beautiful to the city skyline. In my mind, big, beautiful suspension bridges do that better than anything else. Well, down in Burin, a great Newfoundlander figured out how to leave his mark on Newfoundland, and he was able to create something that actually makes sense. Maybe it's something we didn't know we needed, but it's definitely a huge contribution to the province, and specifically to this area. Smuggler's Cove Roadhouse is one of a kind. It's a bar and grill with great food and service. They recently added a few cool options for overnight accommodations, and they offer guided boat and hiking tours and other things too. Of course, they have the Old West Frontier Town, which is initially what caught my eye when I first saw the place on the news, I don't know, a few years ago now. The Frontier Town is mostly just facades, but they do set things up in some of the quote-unquote shops for special events, and some of them are open during the peak tourism season for certain things. Like, there's an ice cream shop in one of them and a virtual reality arcade in another, for just two examples that I'm aware of. There's concerts and gatherings and all kinds of good stuff out in the main outdoor area when the weather's good. And there's a little stage inside as well for live music and probably other things for when the weather isn't so great. The restaurant itself is a really good road trip destination, but it's a lot more than just a restaurant. I can't think of anything else quite like this anywhere else on the island. And I don't just mean there's not another Old West Frontier Town. I mean, I can't think of any other road trip destinations that are as thoughtfully organized as this, no matter what the theme might be. When it comes to telling you about why a place like Smuggler's Cove even exists in the first place, I don't think I could put it any better than the on-site memorial to the man who created the idea does. The visionary behind Smuggler's Cove, Tom Hollett, is remembered as much more than a local businessman or philanthropist. He was a presence, a man who truly believed in the potential that exists here in the Burin area. With strong family roots in the area dated back to the 1800s, Tom worked to preserve heritage, culture, and the magic of his home. A lover and celebrator of our history and the tall tales that surround it, Tom dreamt of bringing that magic to life and sharing it with the rest of the world. Unfortunately, Tom's life was tragically cut short, but his legacy lives on here at Smuggler's Cove. I never knew Tom, but it seems like everybody else did. He used to own and operate Jiffy Cabs in St. John's, and from all reports, he was just the best guy. He seems to have been a model for all of us to follow. And I really hope that one day I actually am able to do something that impacts Newfoundland and Labrador even 1% as much as what he has done. My understanding is that Smuggler's Cove isn't even the only thing Tom contributed to the town of Bearden or the area in life. It's just the thing that caught my attention because it's incredible. Now please understand, if you're looking for the Eiffel Tower or Niagara Falls or Disneyland, this ain't it. What this is, though, is the result of an idea dreamt up by a man with the means to do something special, if simple, in a place that really needed some kind of a boost. My bridge idea was nonsense, based on nothing other than a personal appreciation for bridges and a desire to be remembered after I'm gone. It's an example of thinking big, sure, but it was a ridiculous idea. Smuggler's Cove was nothing more than an idea at one point. It was an ambitious idea from the start. It was never a place that was going to build itself. It wasn't in a location with a plug-and-play customer base. This was basically a cornfield in Iowa that required a dreamer with a few dollars in their bank account to build a baseball field. Tom built it, and they keep coming. The first time I came to Grand Bank, I must have been 12 or 13. Historically, this is one of the most important towns in Newfoundland, but I didn't even know it existed back then. I went there for a soccer tournament, and when they said we were going to Grand Bank, I thought they were cracked. I thought they were talking about the Grand Banks, like we were going to go set up a soccer field in some giant fishing trawler. But nope, they meant Grand Bank, the town of. Coastal, yes, but located on solid dry land. I was pretty good at soccer. Basketball was definitely my sport, even as a little fella, but as far as soccer goes, I could definitely play. Same goes for baseball. From May 2-4 until sometime in September every year, I played basketball at the courts down at St. David's on my own time, pretty much from the time the sun came up in the morning until they turned the lights off at the softball field in the night, except for if I had a soccer game or a baseball game. Basketball was easy. I'd grab my ball and go shoot around by myself even if no one else was around yet. But soccer and baseball were organized. We had uniforms. We followed a schedule. Mount Pearl Minor soccer, Mount Pearl Minor baseball. It felt kind of serious. I never made all-star teams. I usually thought I should have, but what do I know? But one year I made the Mount Pearl B team for soccer, and they told us we were going to train to get ready for a tournament in Grand Bank. I may not be able to remember exactly whether it was 1992 or 1993, but I remember it being one of the best summers of my life. I think my coach's last name was Hillier, and I remember he was a super nice guy. Maybe Rob or Rod Hillier, but I can't remember. He'd probably be around 50 now. One of my all-time best buddies was on the team, and a few other good friends as well. And even though we were young, I remember we all had a blast at practice all summer up at the Mount Pearl Junior High pitch, the MPI pitch now. And we had a blast during the actual trip too, of course. Playing in an all-star soccer tournament was deadly. I drove across the island with my family once when I was 6 to take the ferry port of Basque, and we made a bunch of weekend trips up to Traytown and splash and putt over the years in the summer. I also have family in Harbor, Maine, so shout out to my cousin Randy Wall, who has a bone to pick with me for never mentioning Harbor, Maine in any of my other videos so far, but we spent a lot of time in Harbor, Maine when I was a little kid as well. But this trip to Grand Bank was my first time spending like a significant amount of time off the Avalon. It was so different from Mount Pearl, and I loved it. Even as a young kid, I didn't notice what was happening in this fishing town that had just started to face the reality of the cod moratorium.
To be fair, the hardest effects of the moratorium weren't felt instantly, so it may not have been super apparent anyway, even though I was a kid and didn't really see how things were going in the town. But the troubles didn't start with the moratorium. The fishing industry in Newfoundland, and specifically in towns like Grand Bank, had been struggling for a few years, and in Grand Bank, the major fish plant actually shut down the previous year. But Grand Bank had a few strokes of luck that many other towns in Newfoundland didn't have, and that fish plant that shut down in 1991 reopened under new ownership, and it's actually still running to this very day. Still though, the moratorium was a big blow to a town like this, a town that had existed because of the fishery for well over 200 years. But all I saw was a beautiful town and a bunch of friendly kids around my age, and I loved it. I still love it. What about the actual soccer? Well, how did we do? Our team wasn't great, and we knew that, so we had realistic expectations. Now, if you know anything about soccer in Newfoundland, you probably know that it's a big deal, and teams from the Burin Peninsula are no joke. I may not have known about the town of Grand Bank as a kid, but I definitely knew about towns like Lawn and Burin and definitely St. Lawrence, and I knew about them because of soccer. So we didn't think we were going to walk in as a bunch of townies and just breeze through the tournament. We definitely didn't do that. We won one game, and I scored the winning goal in that game, I swear to God. It was against a team from St. Pierre and Miquelon. I sit on these bleachers right now for the first time in around 30 years. And it's all so vivid. I remember there being a second set of bleachers back then, like right next to this one. You can still actually see the place on the grass where they were. We sat here between our games watching the other teams play their games in the tournament. There was so many things happening at this very point in time in Grand Bank, and other fishing towns just like it, that would shape the direction of Newfoundland's journey up to this very day. But despite all the difficulties that were just beginning to show themselves, I was a kid on a summer adventure in a town that will forever hold a special place in my heart. I'm really glad I'm here right now.
Like, this place isn't a secret. People know about Greens Pond. It's definitely raised its profile recently. But what I've noticed here is it's not just like a tourism town. This is a working community. Kind of feels a little bit redundant to talk about friendly Newfoundlanders in a place like this, specifically in a place like this. Newfoundlanders are friendly for the most part in most places, but here it's definitely obvious. Right? I had a few experiences with business owners, you know, the Hub of the North. It's a restaurant and lodging, really nice place that I didn't know about until after I booked my place, but the restaurant that I was able to try, and the people that worked there were just so helpful, answering any question that I had, and just generally like responsive to any of my requests. It was really good. The Hilltop Bistro, Hilltop Takeout, not Bistro, Hilltop Takeout, part of Marine Takeout, Dykes Marine Takeout. It's a confusing name because there's a bunch of businesses within the one. Had a conversation with the woman that worked there for about 10 minutes while I was waiting for my food. And my Airbnb host, we had a problem with the lock on our door. She lives just outside of town, well, not just outside of town, about 20 minutes outside of town. She ran down with new locks, doorknobs, everything, installed them herself, of course, and took care of the problem like super fast. The stereotypical nature of Newfoundland really shows through here in Greens Pond. So this is the Greens Pond Historic Courthouse, and they just did a bunch of work restoring things, and the project basically was completed at the mid to late August, so recently. But they do stay open, and volunteers run it, and there was a lot of communication between myself and the people that are trying to keep this thing open, and I just wasn't able to coordinate while they were here. So, you know, I'm not able to get inside today. And even today, people were trying to like work things out so that they could get me in. But it's supper time now, and I got to get back to the family. I don't have time to even go in, even if they were there. But it's just another example of a beautiful building that I was really excited about. Still excited about. I'm glad to see it from the outside because it's impressive. But I'm not going to be able to get inside today. There's a population of about 300 people here in the sort of peak summer season, and a lot of these residents are seasonal. And there will be a lot of people have already started to leave. I spoke with a woman at the restaurant up on top of the hill. She said that there's about 100 people or so that are seasonal, and they come from all over, basically the United States and Canada. And they will leave, of course, once the weather starts to turn a little sour, or in my opinion sour. Some people love the winter, but basically the town's going to be, you know, a little sleepier and a lot less going on in general. Restaurants will be closed. They're already sort of starting to close. I'm walking towards Ida's place right now. It's just up ahead of me. They're already down to weekend hours, and I mentioned in another video how I missed out on visiting Ida's by about 5 minutes. We got in on a Sunday at about 5 to 5, couldn't find a place. So we missed out on that. But that's the reality of a town like this. But it's not a tourism focused town. This is a working community. You see the fishing boats coming in about 9 in the morning after an early morning run out on the inshore, which is, you know, the life's blood of Greens Pond, the inshore fishery. And that's still happening. And you get the feel here that this is a normal working community, despite it being a, you know, very small community. The hope for the future with tourism is real here. This place is on a very, very short list of the most beautiful towns in this province. And it's not a secret. People know about Greens Pond. It's just, it hasn't received, as far as I can see, the investment. Oh, can you hear the rooster? Hasn't received the cash injection or the investment that, you know, Bonavista or Fogo Island or Twillingate has yet. But it's definitely coming, because this place is just incredible.
Had a good thing going, then laid it all down. It's been 500 days since I've left town, and I don't remember why I drove away.
Please understand, I'm barely scratching the surface of Greens Pond. I'm exploring the architecture, the old houses and buildings, and the town itself. But there is a network of walking trails, and basically one huge one that goes all the way around the entire island, and then a bunch of detours so that if you don't feel like doing the whole island, you can take shortcuts. But this is a beautiful, beautiful coastline, pretty unique. There's a few other places that, you know, kind of reminds me of Fogo Island. Of course, you know, this whole coast I don't know much about, but I knew about Wesleyville and New West Valley, like the greater New West Valley. And this is a pretty barren, relatively shallow water coastline, so it creates a very different landscape than anywhere else that I've seen in Newfoundland, really. So it's probably a beautiful walk, but I'm not going to be doing it this trip. I just don't have the time, and I'm traveling with family, so I don't really have the ability to just do everything on my own. But I will be back, because this is one of my favorite towns that I've seen so far. I say that a lot in my videos, but I keep finding these places that I never visited before that just open my eyes to things about Newfoundland that I never knew about. So I'm going to be back. I'm going to explore the coastline at some point, but I'm not doing it this time. But just know that if you came, if hiking, going for beautiful seaside strolls is your thing, you have a great, great trail to follow here in Greens Pond. And you start right here, basically.
Weary of all the sunsets, all the yellow and orange and red, the long drives on an open road, and the Sunday
beautiful morning in the beautiful town of Greens Pond. It's actually pretty calm and warm and sunny, and just, you know, brings out the colors that people have painted all of the fishing sheds in the houses with there even more. It's just something about the clouds and the grayness of Newfoundland that when it goes away, even for just a short period of time, it makes it that much more impactful. It's so beautiful here right now. I mean, I can't imagine painting an idyllic fishing town and coming up with anything other than this. But it is a particularly beautiful morning, and it's too bad we're actually leaving this morning. I'm gonna miss Greens Pond. I think this is a little bit eye-opening for me. I'm gonna make sure that I don't skip over it if I'm heading up Highway 320 in the future. You know, Lumsden is a major draw for people, and it should be. It's a beautiful beach. And if you come to Greens Pond, you got a detour for 15 minutes or so off of that highway. So it's 15 minutes in, 15 minutes back out, and you can't just pop in and pop out of here. You have to spend some time. So I suggest factoring in a little bit of time to come here. We're loading up the car here in Greens Pond. On our way to Fogo Island right now. We're going to go catch the ferry. We're giving ourselves a lot of time. We're going for a 3:15 sailing. If we miss that, there's another one scheduled for 3:45. So hopefully we can catch one of them. This town, Greens Pond, is worthy of much more than a quick little mention here. So look out for that full video when it's ready. I'm not just gonna like say, oh yeah, we're in Greens Pond and off we go. No. This is gonna get focused on. But this video here is about our journey from a relatively close location to the Fogo Island Ferry, to sort of give you an idea of what to expect in terms of like timing. So I'm traveling with my wife, my 4-year-old, my 4-month-old. So it's been an interesting journey so far. We covered a lot of ground. This is stop 3 on this major road trip that we have planned. This little leg of the trip is reasonably quick. It should be about 2 hours to get from Greens Pond to the Fogo Island Ferry at Farewell Bay. I do think there's going to be a two vessel sailing today though, so we'll see if that's right. Thought this seemed a little easier than it should have been. Just gonna do a little bit of rearranging here now. The starting point that you're looking at, just don't worry too much about that. We're in Greens Pond. We're in the Bonavista North Coast, Bonavista Bay North. So it's just a big head start. If you come from St. John's, you have to factor in a lot more time for drive time. But this is not a video about total drive time. This is about the experience of actually getting to the ferry on time, what the wait would look like, which boat we're on. All ready to go.
We're on a mission today. We're kind of blowing past Lumsden and Cape Friels and all the beaches, and it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day. This is not the way that I would normally recommend taking this drive. You should definitely take some time to check out the beaches. We've done that many, many times. My poor wife hasn't seen them, but my oldest son has. So we're just going to get to the ferry and deal with the beaches on a future trip.
We used the guideline of arriving about 2 hours in advance that they say for the summer when there's a lot of people traveling to Fogo Island. The thing is, there's people living on Fogo Island that don't really get much of a priority in the ferry lineup. There's some things that people that live on the island can do to ensure they get off if they're trying to come to
the mainland of the island of Newfoundland. The mainland of the island, I don't know what to call it, but actually getting on to Fogo Island, you just kind of have to line up with everybody else. And if you're doing that when there's a lot more travelers coming, that 2-hour guideline I think is going to be super important to heed.
We just pulled up to the ferry lineup. No idea if we're going to get on the 3:15. We got here, it's 1:40 in the afternoon, so about an hour, a little more than an hour and a half before the next sailing. So hopefully we get on. If we don't, there's another one shortly after. Hopefully we get on that one. But we're in the sort of like the pre-lineup right now, so we don't know what's happening. We got here in about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours, but we did take a pit stop around Victoria Cove to calm down a screaming baby and let someone else burn off some energy. So yeah, here we are. Hopefully we get on. Keep you updated.
Messed up, you are. Got me singing like I'm Yoda. You is, we aren't good company to each other. Narrator of my dreams, make it make sense. On the outside, I don't seem like anything less. Will someone ever tag along for the ride? Trust my mama, you're no match for my bad.
So this is very nice ferry. It's got to be new. I don't know when it was built, but it definitely looks and feels new. Lots of space to sit, lots of outdoor space. I feel like the first time we came over here in 2021, this was the boat we took. We're not positive, but couldn't be much older than that. It's about 4:35. We're at the main destination, not the final destination, but stopped at the Cod Jigger for my fish and chips. So it's the end of our journey for everything that matters. And we'll get to our place where we're staying probably about a half an hour from now. We're gonna wait for our food and take it back to our place. So we're staying in Joe Bat's Arm. Get there probably around 5 o'clock. So there's your day. It's actually very, very smooth. It's the off season. It's not as busy as it would be during the main parts of the summer. And we're in Fogo Island.
Couple of pretty important caveats to mention here. So we came at a pretty opportune time of year. So it's literally summer. It's summer for like another day or two. On the calendar it's summer. Still, weather feels great. It's a little cooler today than yesterday, but it's a super nice day. It's summer, all right? But school has started. The tourism season is definitely winding down. So there's fewer people coming for tourism, right? There's still a lot, but there's fewer for sure. And a lot of the businesses have adjusted their hours for the change in season, and things like that are noticeable here. So in terms of getting here on the ferry, we gave ourselves peak summer lead time. We didn't necessarily need it, right? The boat holds, I believe, 75 vehicles, depending on, of course, which types of vehicles are lining up, but it's an approximation of 75 vehicles. That's a lot of cars if it's all cars, all right? The ferries are still on their 2-vessel summer schedule for now, and I believe that changes early in October, if not the first, basically in a couple of weeks from now. That's going to change to a 1-vessel sailing. And last year when we came over in early October, and it was not only a 1-vessel sailing, but the main vessel was out for servicing. So it was a smaller vessel, so we did have to wait for quite a long time in October last year. So, you know, there is no normal, there's no predictable sort of procedure to follow when it comes to getting to Fogo Island on the ferry. What I'm talking about here is this trip in mid-September, how we got here, what our wait times were like. The ferry got here in about an hour. All that kind of stuff is the information that I'm sharing with you, but it can change based on so many different things. This summer, there was a lot of reports of vessels being taken out of service for servicing, things like that. So it was pretty chaotic for a big chunk of summer of 2024. That can happen at any time for any number of reasons. So these are all the things that I'm trying to put on the table for you so you can make your plan if you are trying to decide whether or not to come to Fogo Island. To answer the question, should you come to Fogo Island, the obvious answer is yes. This place is amazing, but it's hard to get here. If you know what to look for in terms of planning, that can help you figure out how much time you need to put aside for the drive from wherever you're starting from, for the wait at the ferry, which you're very unlikely to pull up to the ferry and drive right onto the boat under any circumstance. So it's really important for you to understand that. We managed to get on the bigger ferry, the Veteran, I believe is the bigger one. And it was a direct route, so it takes about an hour. If you get on the boat that takes you to Change Island, I believe one I just saw was the Astron. So Mr. Bodman, and yes, I'm calling you Mr. Bodman, I don't know if I'm supposed to call you Seb. I saw the Astron when I was coming across, and I thought it was your boat, and I almost had a heart attack because we just reconnected through these YouTube videos recently, and I thought it was another sign from Neil. I'm still taking it as another sign from Neil. Really, really cool to see a boat with the word Astron on the side of it sail by me when I was on my way over here. But I digress. There's another boat that does stop at Change Island, and that adds about a half an hour or so to the transit time. It checks in at Change Island, unloads, maybe loads some passengers and supplies and stuff, and then comes over to Fogo Island. So there's two possibilities that you might have in terms of which ferry you actually get on.
So all logistics issues aside, if you're considering going to Fogo Island, I strongly, highly recommend going through with it. It's not the same as going to a lot of other sort of hot spots around Newfoundland, Bonavista, Twillingate, things like that, because you don't have control of access. You're at the mercy of a ferry that has issues, that well-known issues. It can be weather interruptions, there can be vessel servicing, there can be, for whatever reason, an influx of travelers on a particular run that prevents you from getting on the run that you want to be on. So many things that can happen. And now in a couple of weeks from now, the 2-vessel summer schedule changes to a 1-vessel schedule. And that's going to make it that much more difficult to make it a timely trip for you. But it is so worth the effort. The place is amazing. It really feels like no other place, even in Newfoundland. I've heard it called Newfoundland's Newfoundland, and just like Newfoundland in a greater sense, it's kind of difficult to get to, but so worth it if you can make it happen. You're going to require some patience, it's going to take some planning, and it's also going to take some luck. So if you're thinking about doing it, do it. Whether you're from Newfoundland or whether you're from anywhere else in the world and you're fascinated by the idea of this tiny community on the corner of the flat earth, go see the place, go experience the place.
I keep coming back to this place. A couple of times a year now, actually. I don't have any family or close friends here. I haven't ever worked here or anything like that. I'm just fascinated by this town. I actually remember my first ever visit to this town. The date is on record because it was a very notable day in Newfoundland's history. It was June 24th, 1997. Everyone got all excited because some old moneybags missus from England came to town. And there was a million awesome things on the go around Newfoundland for the Cabot 500 year, but probably the biggest event of the whole summer took place when a replica of the Matthew, which is the boat that John Cabot sailed across the Atlantic in, arrived in Bonavista. It was a miserable old day, cold and damp and windy. My friend Signe called me in the morning that day and said, "Me and Len are going to Bonavista. Want to come?" I wasn't doing anything else, so I said, "Sure." They came and got me and we hit the road. I remember walking around the town when we got there, even then thinking, like, is this place real? Is this just a movie set? The town was beautiful, with the old houses and narrow roads and picket fences and all that stuff. There were thousands of people in town for this event, and despite the lousy weather, the vibe was amazing. So it was impossible to recognize that the town was actually in the middle of an incredibly challenging period. I've heard the current mayor say in an interview once that as a youngster it felt like Bonavista was a dying town. The statistics bear that out. The population of the town dropped by about 40% in the years after the COD moratorium was announced. Throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of reason to believe there was much of a future here at all. There's still lots of mementos of the Cabot 500 celebrations around the town, and this shouldn't be ignored. I really enjoy the pretty Landfall Municipal Park on the way up to the lighthouse at Cape Bonavista, and there's a statue of John Cabot there that seems fun to me, the way the Rocky statue in Philadelphia seems fun. That Cabot 500 stuff came along at the exact moment we really needed it. Times were really bad in Newfoundland in 1997. And this gave us something to get excited about, something to take our minds off of what was happening, especially in towns like Bonavista. But what's happening in Bonavista now? Why am I so optimistic about the place? Well, you can see all kinds of small businesses around town. Some are seasonal and geared toward tourism, which is great. But there are lots that operate year-round. Even a few of the restaurants are able to stay open in the months that don't see a lot of tourists. I'm not sure that people in this town thought that would be possible even just like 10 or 15 years ago.
Back at PK's with the family this time around, and they got great fish and chips. I've been here before for the fish and chips, but they got cod tongs on the menu. Usually when we see cod tongs on the menu, they're usually out no matter where you go. These guys actually have them, so.
Tourism is a big economic driver in the town these days. One look at the town as soon as you enter and you probably won't be surprised. The fishery in Newfoundland is very different today than it used to be, but it still plays a big role here, with Bonavista being one of the many Newfoundland towns that owes its very existence to it. But you have skincare product manufacturers, salt makers, artists of all kinds that ship their products around Newfoundland, the country, the whole world actually. There's the cutest little tea room I ever saw. There's a lovely grand bakery and a very cool salon spa. And these are all meant to serve the people who make their home here. The beautiful theater has been renovated recently. You know what? It might actually be the renovation and the restoration of many of the buildings and properties around town that really gives me that feeling that this is a healthy, thriving town now. The biggest single contributor to the renovation and overall construction around town, as far as I can tell, is an organization called Bonavista Living. Bonavista Living is a business. It's headed up, as I understand it, by the current mayor of Bonavista, John Norman. I'm not affiliated with Bonavista Living, and I certainly am not normally in the practice of talking up politicians, even at the municipal level in small towns. But I have to admit, even though I'm pretty sure I'm a couple of years older than him, I really look up to John Norman. The work that he and his teams have done in restoring the quote-unquote built heritage of Bonavista through Bonavista Living, and surely through some initiatives that go through Town Hall, is something that I believe we're going to study, at least as Newfoundlanders, for years to come. I don't know John, but I met him once. I actually passed by his house. He was out in his front yard watering his garden or something, and I said hi to him because I recognized him, and I said, "You got a nice town here," and he responded to me, and we had a little short back and forth. Seemed like a pretty nice guy. It's not just the town itself that inspires me. The whole road that you have to take to get up to Bonavista is like a movie set. Well, maybe not the road itself. The Bonavista Highway is kind of a disaster in some places, so take your time driving to get to the town of Bonavista. And one place along the way was actually purpose-built for a big film production called Random Passage back in around the year 2000. But I swear, every single community you'll come across looks like it was dreamt up by Walt Disney himself. There's actually another town on the way up that was planned and built by a fishermen's union over 100 years ago, which is something else unique to North America. There's no other town that can claim the same that I know of. There are geological wonders and puffins and hobbit houses that aren't actually hobbit houses, but they look like that. And all of this is just on the highway leading to the town of Bonavista. Bonavista was not supposed to be like this. It was a dying community, and now it's thriving. It's not a perfect town by any means. I've talked about the issues with the hospital, or the issue of Scotiabank recently closing their only branch here. Many businesses are giving it a go, but they don't all survive. It's not actually a magical fairy tale land, even if it does kind of look like it is. But the fact that businesses continue to come in and continue to give it a go, with many of them doing well, is fuel for others to believe in the town and invest in the town. And young families move back to town and are living good, safe, comfortable lives. Bonavista is not the only town in Newfoundland that gives me a lot of hope for the future. But with the possible exception of Fogo Island, it may give me more hope than anywhere else. Not all towns will be able to perfectly replicate what's happening here. Not all towns have a John Norman or a Zeta Cobb. But what if your town has a Tom Holland or John Devereaux? Even starting on a smaller scale, I believe that the things that are happening here in Bonavista are possible in pretty much any region of this amazing place we call Newfoundland. You gotta start somewhere.